Today we're going to talk about angle relationships and parallel lines.
Now say it again slower.
Today we're going to talk about angle relationships and parallel lines.
Alright, so as Montrell told you, we're going to talk about angle relationships and parallel lines. Alright? I want you to define vertical angles and adjacent angles, but before we can do that, you have to know some symbols. This symbol right here means angle. So when you see this symbol right here, you should think in your head, angle. That means you got to write it, Marquette. Alright, another symbol you're going to have to know is this symbol right here means congruent. Alright, now, what does congruent mean? Congruent means the angle relationship is the same. Okay, in other words, the two angles may have the same measure. So let's say I wanted to say angle 1 right here and angle 4 right here were congruent. The way I would write that is angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. Okay? Angle 1, which is this angle right here, which includes all this, which is the distance from here to here, this angle in degrees is congruent to this angle in degrees. And the way you write that is angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. Okay? Now vertical angles are across from each other. So angle 1 and angle 4 are vertical. So let's write that. Angle 1 is vertical with angle 4. Okay? But now, angle 1 and 2 here are not vertical. They're what? Adjacent. See this word right here? Adjacent. Angle 1 and angle 4 are adjacent. Alright, so as you can see, vertical angles are congruent. Let's write that down. Vertical angles. Now you look, I used the symbol for angle and put apostrophe S. Vertical angles are congruent. You have to include this in your definition. Okay, if vertical angles are congruent, and angle 1 and angle 4 are vertical, then angle 1 is congruent to angle 4. And angle 3 and angle 2 are vertical because they're across from each other. You see how they're across? You see how angle 1 and 2 they touch, they share this line right here? That makes them adjacent because they share a line. But now angle 3 and angle 2 don't share a line, do they? All they share is this vertex right here. That means angle 3 and angle 2 are vertical. So if you can draw a straight line through them, they are vertical. Now these two adjacent angles, 1 and 2, angle 1 and 2 are adjacent, okay, but they're not necessarily congruent. Okay? They might be congruent, alright, but not necessarily. They could or they could not be. Now do you see two angles up at the top there that are adjacent?
1 and 2.
Angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent. So at the top, angle 1 and angle 2 are adjacent at the top. What others?
3 and 4.
That's right, 3 and 4, 1 and 3, 2 and 4. Alright, so our picture on the board gives us two lines that are parallel. Line M is parallel to line N. So let's write that right here. M, but don't write the word parallel. I have a symbol for parallel. This symbol right here means parallel. M is parallel to N. You see all these definitions we're just using as shortcuts, like the symbol for angles instead of writing the word angle. M is parallel to N. Okay. So this symbol right here means what? Parallel. Now, I want to know in these angles 1, 3, 2, and 4, which angles are vertical?
1 is 3.
Yeah. Angle 1 and angle 3 are vertical angles. Which others?
2 and 4.
2 and 4 are vertical. Okay? Now, of these angles, which one are adjacent?
2 and 3, 1 and 4, 4.
Yeah, 2 and 3 is adjacent. 1 and 4 are adjacent. 4 and 3 are adjacent. 1 and 2 are adjacent. So adjacent means they're side by side. Vertical means they're across from each other. So right here, which angles are adjacent? 5, 6, 6, 7, 7, 8, 8 and 5. Those are all adjacent. The vertical angles are 5 and 7. Also, 8 and 6 are vertical. Okay, so you're going to have to understand the difference between adjacent and vertical. All right, so complementary, the word complementary in math, in geometry, means two angles that add up to equal 90 degrees. Okay, two angles that when you add their totals, you get 90 degrees. The word supplementary in geometry means if you add two angles up and they equal 180 degrees, then they are supplementary. Okay? Now, right here I have an example. Angle 1 is 87 degrees. What is angle 2 for angle 1 and angle 2 to be supplementary? That means angle 1 plus angle 2 has to equal how much?
180.
180, because supplementary means 180. Okay? So what does angle 2 have to be? Well, if you know the total has to be 180, and you want to know what this is, yeah, just take 180 minus 87, and what will angle 2 equal? 93 degrees. Now, the way you check to see if you're right is just add 87 plus 93 and see if it equals 180. Some of you will get like 103 or 113. Add it, it won't equal 180, so you know you got it wrong. Alright, so I want y'all to have the definition of the word congruent. Congruent is a figure with the same measure. Two figures, let's write two figures. Two figures with the same measure. And by measure, I mean length or degree. So that might be 10 feet. Two sides might be 10 feet each, so they're congruent. Or two angles might be 20 degrees each, so they're congruent. The reason I wrote figure instead of angles is because you can say two sides are congruent. Okay? You can say line M is congruent to line N. The little line above the M means line M. Now what if I wrote this? What does this mean? Angle M is congruent to angle N. So is this line or this angle symbol important? Yes. It tells you what you're talking about. Let's talk about the word transversal. Alright, a transversal is a line intersecting two parallel lines. Okay, this line right here is M, and this line right here is N. If I take a line and I intersect those two lines, okay, any line that intersects two parallel lines, this green line here, okay, it's our transversal. Okay. So all a transversal is a line intersecting two parallel lines. Alright, now we're going to continue the lesson, and we're going to learn the definitions of the words alternate, interior, and exterior. Now this line that intersects the two parallel lines was called the transversal. Okay? 2 points are alternate if they're on opposite sides of the transversal. Okay? 2 points are interior. You see, if I connect my two parallel lines, it creates a box. You see this box right here? All the points on the inside of the box are called interior. So 4, 3, 5, 6 are interior. Interior means inside. Now exterior points are on the outside of that box. So 1 and 2 and 7 and 8 are your exterior points. Alright, so we just talked about alternate. Alternate means on opposite sides of the transversal. We said 1 and 2 are alternate angles because they're on opposite sides of the transversal. One's on the left, one's on the right. We also said 8 and 7 were. We also said 5 and 6 were. And we also said 4 and 3 were. Are 2 and 8 alternate angles? Yes. Because 2 and 8 are on opposite sides of the transversal. One's on the left, one's on the right. So are 4 and 6. Now, interior, if you connect your two parallel lines, these are the angles inside this box are the interior angles. So angle 4, angle 3, angle 6, and angle 5 are all interior. Now the angles that aren't included as interior are exterior. So angle 8, angle 7, angle 1, and angle 2 are exterior angles. Now I tell you all this so that I can teach you the definitions of alternate interior angles and alternate exterior angles. Alright, so if you'll look at the board, we just learned the definition of alternate exterior angles. We learned that alternate angles are on the opposite side of the transversal. If you want an alternate exterior angle, you've got to have one that's on the exterior, one from the top, one from the bottom. So we learned that angle 1 and angle 7 were alternate exterior angles, and angle 2 and angle 8 were alternate exterior angles. We also learned that alternate exterior angles are congruent. So we wrote a congruency statement. Angle 1 is congruent to angle 7 because they're alternate exterior. And angle 2 is congruent to angle 8 because they're alternate exterior. Now let's talk about alternate interior angles. Now, we said that angle 4 and angle 6 were alternate interior angles. They're both interior and they're both opposite of each other in regards to the transversal. Okay? So we said angle 4 and angle 6 were alternate interior, and I just told you alternate interior angles are congruent, which means they're the same. So let's write a congruency statement. Angle 4 is congruent to angle 6, and angle 5 is congruent to angle 3. Okay? The reason angle 5 and angle 3 are congruent is because they are what? Alternate interior angles. Now we talked yesterday about vertical angles, and we've written up here all our vertical angles. Vertical angles are across from each other, so 2 and 4 are vertical, 1 and 3 are vertical, 5 and 7, and 6 and 8 are vertical. We also learned yesterday that vertical angles are congruent. Okay? Now, these are all your vertical angles in this diagram right here. Okay, but now I want you to predict this. If angle 1 is 40 degrees, what's angle 3 going to be? 40 degrees, because we learned that angle 1 and angle 3 are congruent. If angle 2 is 140 degrees, what's angle 4? 140 degrees, because they are vertical angles, which means they're congruent, they're the same. Alright, so let's imagine angle 1 right here was 45 degrees. What would angle 2 be? 125 degrees. Now the way I got 125 was I know this whole thing has to be 180. Corey said it would be 90. 45 plus 90 is 135. 135 is not 180, so we know that's wrong. So if we said 125 plus 45, let's see if that's right. 5 plus 5 is 0. Carry the 1. 4, 5, 6, 7. So that's not right either, is it?
It's 135.
It's good. It's going to be 135 degrees.
I thought you said it had to be 180.
It does. 45 plus 135 is 180. Now that we've got these two, we can answer every other question here. What would angle 3 be?
45.
45.
45.
The reason it's 45 is because 3 and 1 are vertical. They're the same. What is angle 4?
135.
The reason it's 135 is because 4 and 2 are vertical, and 2 was 135. Now 5 and 1 are the same, so what's 5?
45.
What's 6?
135.
135. What's 7?
45.
45. And what's 8?
135.
So you see, just from getting the one angle, we were able to find all the rest of them. Alright, so in our angle relationship section, we learned a bunch of definitions. We learned what vertical angles were. Okay, now what do we know about vertical angles?
They're congruent.
They're congruent. We also learned what adjacent angles were. We learned what complementary angles and supplementary angles were. What do complementary angles add up to equal?
90.
90. What do supplementary angles add up to equal?
180.
180. We learned a transversal is a line intersecting two
Parallel.
parallel lines. We also learned what an alternate interior angle was and what an alternate exterior angle was.